The summer season continues with the second stop that we take, and we are going on maybe an interesting journey with Days with My Stepsister. Now, I know how the title sounds, I know, but we'll have to see what happens. So typically, these shows are kind of trashy, I think would be the word I'm looking for, but sometimes they're fun trash, right? Sometimes they're so bad that they're fun and they're just good, right? And I can look at Domestic Girlfriend and Rent a Girlfriend, right? They sometimes they're just not good, but they're good as a result. Does that make sense? Like if you can tolerate it and you can get through it, that is. Now those two shows I mentioned are polar opposites for a variety of reasons. But that makes me really curious what this is. Now, my understanding of this show is nothing, I guess, outside of key visuals and stuff that I've seen, and character designs and whatever. So I would make the assumption, based on some stuff that I've understood to hear, and considering the fact I believe it's a novel or like a light novel, so for that reason, the trashiness is usually tamed a little bit more, like it's a little bit more toned down, because they're not like selling like these characters and their designs and everything like mangas kind of would. So the assumption I kind of have is we're going to take more of maybe a serious approach. And I don't know the proper word I want to use because I want to say mature, but we have to see, I guess, how that kind of goes. But I meant more so in like, we're not just going to be like making stepsis jokes the entire time. And at this also not going to be like, have random dude like crushing extremely heavy on his sister here, but then like trying to make like weird justifications for why it's okay and like all these other things. Like I feel like it for whatever reason, I feel like we're gonna have some substance behind it, like it's gonna work. Whereas like those other two series I mentioned before, like kind of were walking on the border of certain things not working and working, and that would lean more towards say Domestic Girlfriend route, where they tried to take themselves serious, but had so much like trash within it that it just ended up not, it didn't work at certain moments, where like something like Rent a Girlfriend doesn't really feel like it tries to take itself too serious, so it can kind of get away with having like the amount of trash that it has within it, right, and not really progressing and going places. So we'll have to wait and see, and maybe my comparison to those two is kind of unjust. You guys are not going to be too pleased with me saying that, but I don't know anything about it, and I'm just kind of going off like the immediate direction of like where my mind almost goes when we go like in the direction of just what the title is, because like the only other thing I think of is like Kiss This, and I would pray to God that's not what this is. So, or actually, honestly, I'm not gonna be angry, but either way, I don't think we're gonna go that way. I haven't gotten that vibe. I feel like this would be a lot more popular of like like talked about maybe or memed about, even if it isn't an anime yet, because of that, right? I just feel like that would make sense. So because that's not the case, I have like this suspicion almost that that's not what's gonna happen, and we are gonna try and be a little bit more matured with our approach to whatever happens here. This is a Studio Dean production who I haven't really seen anything by. I've seen the Konosubas, the first couple seasons they did, and I think that's really it. So I haven't seen much from them. So nothing of recent either. So I got nothing to go off of based on production like quality and everything that we're gonna get into. But like let's be honest, it's probably like home slice of life. Like it doesn't have to go too hard. It really doesn't. If you can drive the story well enough, I don't care enough to criticize the animation and harass it. So we'll leave it out to see. But as long as it can visually pass my eyes and I don't have to look at it and be like that looked terrible, I don't care. So I'll make the assumption and the guess this is sister, probably through marriage, right? And they were probably already like friends, or they probably already knew of each other going into whatever that was. And then here we are, and we're together now, and we have to kind of work through it and probably grow feelings for each other now, or we can go, they've had feelings for each other before, or were in relationship, or like something like that, and then now they're together. But that's the other stepsister one, right? I think if you guys seen that one, I don't remember that one's called, but I think that's the other one. So I don't think that would be this, unless it is, and then they all just kind of go the same route. But we'll have to end up seeing. So expectations are just kind of average, and like I always say, I do hold the right to drop anything that I am not enjoying. Plus, this is a weird season, and I said before in the I Love video yesterday that we did, where I was not too certain of what we're really going to do this season. I was trying to do less because I want to have more time to focus on the older series that we're starting, but there's a few that just caught my attention strictly based off of like this was one of the ones I was actually planning to do before I decided to drop like everything else that I was going to probably end up doing, right? Like this was like one of those ones that was probably in the upper half of the list I was thinking on. So I'll do it anyways. And then I went through and watched all trailers and stuff for this season specifically recently. So I now have, I think, like a firm grasp of probably what we're going to at least try. But we'll see. And if we end up having to drop it after one episode, or this doesn't even see the channel, it happens. If we really like it, we'll probably continue. I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be too heavy on discussion, or if it's going to be nice, quick, and easy. It doesn't really matter as long as we're having a good time. I do not believe I have much more to say. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you like it all, hit the like and subscribe to me on to me. Feel free to stick around for the discussion. Leave any comments for this episode or series. Let's get going with Days with My Stepsister, episode 1. We look on and observe the city. It depends. Did you just meet him for the first time after a remarriage, or did you meet him... Okay. So it's not like you've known him for like years on end and then they got together, like, right? Because that be happening sometimes. That happens most of the time, I'd argue.
義理の妹という存在はただの他人だ。小説や映画では血のつながっていないことを免罪符に平気な顔で恋愛対象となり男女として結ばれる。
Okay, so we're self-aware. We are very aware.
創作世界にあるような出来事と現実は違う。
Yep.
愛は他人の始まりっていうらしいけど、それが義理の兄弟ならば最初から他人で最後まで他人のまま終わるってこと。
I don't agree with that. That's not true. You can grow close to her. Look at the giraffe. Attention to detail on the giraffe. I wonder if there is no romance between the two. No, there's no way. We wouldn't name it that way, right? I was just thinking maybe it's like actually just two people who come together and then grow extremely close and become, I don't know, like actual siblings by the end. But I doubt that.
再婚することにしたんだ。は？上司に連れて行かれたお店で働いてた子なんだよ。酔いつぶれてた僕を世話してくれてね。
それ騙されてるんじゃ。
大丈夫だ。アキコさんだけはそんなことないから。
You'll meet her soon.
ユウタも今夜会えばわかる。
今夜？
おお。待って。
These type of things are always interesting to me because it's like, I'd assume they would have met before that at least once. But I guess it was. He thinks it was a quick decision here, so.
親父が幸せなら何でもいいよ。俺は今まで通りやるだけだから。
今まで通りとはいかないよ。妹ができるんだし。
妹？
A sibling?
妹。アキコさんの娘さん。
I bet they're the same age too. Why would you give him that picture? She does not look like that now.
はじめまして。綾瀬咲です。
Saki.
親父。
ああ。サキちゃん、おま。
Yes, a little, not so much. What was that picture for?
でもユウタの方が誕生日1週間早い。
Oh my god.
紛らわしくてごめんなさいね。さっき言ってば大きくなってから全然写真撮らせてくれなくて。
Okay, at least I answered
が
that.
悪いせいか写真写りが悪くて来る相手なのに怖い人だったらどうしようって思ってたから。
You seem alright.
どうなんですかね。
You don't really know.
優しい顔をしてる気がしますけど。
ほ
Mm-hmm.
とんど毎日バイトして大学の学費を貯めてるって。成績も優秀だって聞い
Who's just spilling everything about my boy? Don't.
親に言えないこと？
そう。もっと言うと浅村くんにしか言えないこと。
この短時間でそこまで信頼を獲得した。
No, but it's kind of just between us anyways.
話し方、表情、どれにも 強い熱を感じない。だから多分私の言葉も正確に理解してくれると思って。
Hmm. A good read of character.
私はあなたに何も期待しないから、あなたも私に何も期待しないでほしいの。
We're just gonna kind of continue as we always
あなた
have.
なら正確に理解できるよね。
安心したよ。今初めてね。
私も今初めて。
ぜひそのスタンスでやっていこう、綾瀬さん。
臭いとか言われたらへこむし、
繊細か。
僕くらいの年齢になるとクリティカルなんだよ。
今日からお世話になりますっていう気持ちの品を買ってきたんですよ。
Yeah, it's just a couple, not much.
気にしなくていいよ。お母さん断れない性格だからおすすめされたのを全部買わされたの。
ちょっとさき、それじゃ私がダメな大人みたいじゃない。
事実でしょ。
It's a fun relationship because you can tell the dad has some things off with him too. So each of them can compliment each other pretty nice.
健全な精神を得るにはまず清潔な空間からと言いますから。
I have heard
一
that.
つ残さず殲滅せよってのが浅村家の家訓なので。
なんだか物騒な家訓だね。
太一さん、さすがね。
よし、大丈夫。いける、いけるぞ。
I fucks with him. I fucks with him.
これから一つ屋根の下でよろしくしよう。
Well done, well done.
机もとりあえず窓際に置いたけど、動かしたかったら言ってください。
ありがとう。
It's a pretty damn big room, dude. Yeah.
普通だと思いますけど。
Average. Come on, buddy. Get expectations down a bit, don't?
九条一間、私の部屋もなかったから。
じゃあ布団敷いて2人で寝てたんだ。ですか？
うん。お母さんが夜の仕事で生活リズムが正反対だから。
I sleep while she works. Yeah. I know that feeling too
その
well.
方がいろいろ気楽なんじゃないですか？
どうして敬語なの？
Maybe that's just him. He's trying to make good impressions.
同い年なんだからもう少し気楽でもいいよ。
同い年だからこそなんですが。
だってさ、クラスメートとか友達同士で
Maybe he has no
変じゃ
friends.
ない？
それは強者の理論でしょう。
Hmm.
しっかり確認した方が良さそうだから確認するんですけど、どちらかというと敬語はやめてほしいですか？
そうね。
At least you think so until I do. Then you ask me to go back.
別に私尊敬されるような人間じゃないし。
OK。やめるよ敬語。
She doesn't see herself how others see her.
友達と同じようにするのは難しいけど、せっかく腹を割って分かりやすくしてくれてるんだ。
Yeah. Yeah. Way better that you're communicating it.
やっぱ思った通りだ。
If I asked her to do something, you would.
地味に助かる。この友達にこういうスタンスで行くとさ、何それ契約書かよって笑われて真面目に受け取ってくれないんだよね。だから一人以外はやめ切っちゃった。
Over that? Well, I guess there's no room to fuck around. Yeah.
何考えてるかわかんない。それを伝える努力もしない子たちの機嫌を伺ってる時間がもったいないし。
Banger perspective. W woman. All the memories. Of course. Her not freaking out. This is a really awesome sequence.
チャラそうなのが進学校通いでびっくりした。
あ、いや、俺もそうなんだよ。
Huh? Since when? How do we not know that?
は何もないでしょ。
でも、なるべく学校では他人のふりするよ。
Is that what she wants?
別に
Yeah.
私は全然平気だよ。方が浅村くんのためにはなるかな。
それって、
Weird rumors on his part for her being flashy girl, I'd guess.
私目の前で電話されても気にならないから。
ありがとう。
今日ずっと女の子の匂いさせてるけど。
You smell of a woman. Who is it? No.
本当に匂います。
プンプンに。どれだけイチャイチャしてたらそこまで匂いが移るんだろう。
早退します。
ああ、嘘だから一人にしないで。妹さん、そろそろかなって。
Yeah.
どう？かわいい？
美人だとは思います。
ひゅ
Ooh.
ー、美人と同居か。この世の春だね。
何も起きませんよ。
何は起きることもあるんじゃない？
唐突におっさんみたいな下ネタ吐くくせ。
Nah, it makes her fun.
僕と女子校だから仕方ないのよ。
女子校に対するひどい風評被害はどういう態度が兄弟としてふさわしいのか。
後輩くんなら自然体にしてれば大丈夫だよ。
It's essentially what the talk I'm pretty sure you had before was. Unless I got a really bad read on it. Or she essentially is like, yeah, you do your thing, I do my thing, nothing changes really. You don't have to treat her like she's like a sister. You don't have to take on a new role and act as though you're something you're not. Be you, I be me. Nothing changes. Now that's different entirely if she was like 7, but she's not. So we don't have to. Are we gonna get a greeting home that's gonna surprise him? Because usually that doesn't happen. Pacing is so interesting.
ただいま。
Huh.
ごめん。ただいまって。
Yeah, he's never really said it to anyone, I bet either.
どう返事すればいいかわかんなかった。別にひどい扱い受けてたとかそんなんじゃないから。私が学校行ってる間に帰ってきて睡眠と用事済ませて私が帰ってくるまでに出勤。そのルーチン回してただけだから。
Yup.
今日は久しぶりに買い物できたし結構楽しかったよ。
プロ、まだだよね。
うん。
順番、どっちがいい？
Brother's like, I don't know how to handle any of this shit. I'm trying to refrain myself. I was gonna jokingly say that they should go together, but I'm trying to hold back. The tone of this is very different. So I'm trying to not change what it is. A slight hesitation.
はい。
お先。風呂、どうぞ。
Thanks, brother.
おやすみ、綾瀬さん。
ありがとう。おやすみ、浅村くん。
I wonder if it's OP because we get title sequence. Usually you get that in an ED. The little versions of them, so interesting. A lot of different things behind that. Turn out the lights. Or on. Oh, I'm just getting used to it. There you go. A really interesting start And I'm not sure, I think, how I want to frame a lot of this, but I think first I would like to at least lay out some thoughts about the me presenting this on the channel, because that's kind of the first thing I think that almost went through my mind, where we watch a lot of different series, and I typically, sometimes at least, it depends on the series of course, but try and play into the mood that we're having, right? Try and take funny moments for being funny and openly and very expressively kind of showcase that, while when serious things happen, tone that down a bunch and try and take it serious. Sometimes I get a little too lost in trying to uncover the things that are happening and speak over it, and then my mind wanders a bit more instead of just emotionally investing myself kind of into each of those scenes, which is something I am constantly trying to remind myself of and kind of improve and get better on, because I think that would make for a better experience viewing wise for myself, but also you guys. This is another one of those series where it's interesting because so much of what happened here wasn't, let's be expressive and open and laugh about all of it, right? And I can turn this reaction in an instant, right? I could go, let's just start making the most obnoxious jokes over and over and do that, but I don't want to do that, just because it doesn't match the vibe, the tone of what we have for the show. It doesn't match that, so I don't want to do that. So then I feel like as we were going, I was more in a scenario, let's just kind of feel the things that's going, but we get a lot of sequences, and maybe it's because it's beginning episodes. Let's let this breathe. Let's showcase a lot of the uncertainties, of the new surroundings, of the anxieties, of all the stuff that's kind of between our main two characters, and showcase that stranger-like feeling that we described from the beginning, which then gives it a lot of room kind of to be spaced out and breathe, hence the slow pacing and everything that comes with it. But where does that leave me? What should I do more so for the reaction is kind of, as I started thinking, I think in a lot of those spacey moments, and even afterwards, if that was interesting at all for, say, you guys to watch. So I think that's would probably be the thing I most likely would like to hear, I think, in the comments, was just the idea of, I'll cut this up in a way I think works, and then just let me know kind of how you feel about it, because I liked it, and I actually really liked it a lot. I was a lot more than I think I kind of went into thinking I was going to, but it was very different from maybe what I was exactly expecting, which leaves me just wondering, is this an interesting watch for you, or is this more of a, let's kind of just, you should probably just watch it on your own, and then I'll watch something else on the channel instead? You know, like, what should be the route that we kind of go, is kind of where I'm left a little bit uncertain there. I'm not certain how much there's going to be for me to really dive in and talk about. I'm not certain, like, future episodes and stuff, that is, there's always things to talk about in the first episode. So it's just like, it makes me wonder with a place that we're going to give it to be on the channel. I'm not certain in my own mind of, is this something that you guys are actively wanting to seek out and enjoying, or do you think it would be better experience if I almost kind of could just turn my, not turn my brain off, but like not have to have the camera on me and just kind of get sucked into the show? Because I almost felt like that was happening to me at different moments throughout this, and I was struggling to even think of things I wanted to say, and just kind of wanted to sit here and observe it. So I have no problem doing that and still posting that, and then just letting my thoughts occasionally kind of come out in it, but I just don't want to create a reaction that has 10 to 15 minutes of the thing in itself, and you guys are sitting here and I don't really add much to it, because those are the type of things I really don't love. The thing is, I don't love when people go too much to not match the tone on reactions, right? I don't love that. Like, when a scene's supposed to be taken serious and it's supposed to be emotional and you're supposed to be feeling it, I just don't like when, like, people are cracking jokes and stuff over it. That stuff just doesn't sit right to me, and that's not the type of content I personally enjoy. But at the same time, I also don't like when people take things too serious when they're supposed to be doing all that stuff, right? So finding that balance. And also, I just don't like when people sit there for 20 something minutes and don't say like almost anything at all, and it's like they're focusing too much on it. And I like to find that balance kind of between them, and I try to strive for finding some sort of balance between it. And sometimes I do catch myself when I watch them back and edit and everything, where I feel like I'm doing too much or too little of one or the other thing, and that's constantly like a push and pull thing I'm kind of working with here and trying to adjust constantly to what I feel should be fit. But just once again, I guess just let me know, like, how overall do you think that this reaction itself kind of came out to a point that, like, is this something that you would like to continue seeing me do? Because I enjoyed it enough that I actually would like to continue. I just don't know if that's something that others are really going to be too invested in or intrigued in. So I would really, really appreciate kind of your own thoughts and feedback towards it. But that's just me trying to be a little bit more transparent about where we're headed with it, because some shows, even if there isn't much for that, I feel like there might be a lot to really talk about, so I can just shut up and really kind of grasp everything. Whereas this, I just don't know going forward, at least, especially so novel readers, it would be awesome to hear from too. Is there going to be a lot that you think I can openly like discuss, or all of our videos going to end up being like 20 minutes max, and then it's like we're having like 5-minute discussions about it, like where are we headed, which is typically what we would have like comedies and stuff. So if my reaction's limited and there's nothing there, and there's also no substance or real things that I want to kind of latch on into and talk on, what is there for me to kind of present here for you is more of like, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm thinking right now. So please let me know. But let's talk about the episode. Enough of all of that. So I really liked it. I actually loved it, a lot of it. The pacing is rather slow, but I think works perfectly and is intentional completely. The environment of the series itself kind of just dragged me in, and I think that's because of the pacing, that it allowed everything to kind of feel very kind of slowed, and I could really observe and pick out and focus on different aspects and let my mind kind of wander a little bit, which I think really sucked me in a lot more. And it did a good enough job, because you do walk a very thin line sometimes where you're going over that, and you have to either have people fall on the edge of I'm extremely bored, nothing is happening, or they become very immersed in what's occurring. I found myself on the immersion side, but I would likely argue that a bunch of people are going to find themselves on the other side as well, which I think is fairly valid, and it's arguably just not somebody's cup of tea. But to call it like bad because of that, I just wouldn't agree with at all, or appreciate somebody who kind of has that view almost, because I don't think it was, and I don't think there was anything that you could like objectively really look at as that, and it just maybe isn't your type of series, is more so the wording that you should kind of go for there. But I really did like it. It takes on that mature approach almost that I was speaking on at the beginning, the characters being very aware of the surroundings, of the stereotypes and the things that kind of come out, the things that people say and the fiction that people create based on this, and based on like their kind of scenario and how that makes them feel, and how this is real life and how that's not the case. And it's not real life because it's a fucking fictional series, but it is in their own head, right, in their own world. And I get that completely for where they're coming from. And I think they laid so many things out that are very strong stepping stones that so many series struggle to kind of lay out between their characters. And I say struggle, but they really don't. They intentionally don't lay them out, because it allows for misunderstandings in certain things that work for convenient like little holes in the plot that can let them like loop around and fuck all about and just find some random things to kind of latch onto by having main character lash out at certain things, or having miscommunication, or just having these random moments. I mean, we get the moment where he trips and he ends up like knocking over her boxes and shit, and he ends up like grabbing onto one of her bras or something, and everybody finds it hilarious. But it's typically one of those things where the maid girl herself would like lose her shit completely and like get completely like destroyed by that happening and being embarrassed. But instead, everybody involved just kind of finds it funny, and it takes more of a mature approach. This isn't some sort of fucking over the top carefree joking anime or something, right? These people are treating this like their everyday life, and why would we get overly upset or destroyed by something along those lines happening, especially in a scenario where it's supposed to be a character who none of the people here really feel that sort of feeling towards, right? Because we're just siblings, we're just strangers, as we like to portray it at the end of the day. So who the fuck cares, right? And I think a lot of that stuff is handled extremely excellent, and they just do a good job. I think it really exploring the space between the characters, them trying to find their grounds of working and seeing another person on the day-to-day that they've never had to really experience and live with, by not having people like Saki not be able to see her mom like really ever, right? And now having to have somebody come home and actually interact with them while she's there, and just so many little things that can come about because now she has to do things different. We get the entire end sequence where she's like stumbling around and looking for the lights and not figuring out which one is which. It's because she's adjusting to her new environment and everything that she's in. But also, it's not a scenario that she would ever really have to kind of put herself in because she's so used to where she is. But also now she has somebody else here, so she can't just like kind of leave the lights on for all this stuff. It's not like she's leaving the light on either, as we see the initial light come on like at the door or something. Maybe she would leave something along those lines on so that her mom can come home and actually be able to see whenever she actually does. It's something like that I think is so good at really just spacing things out and telling a story and telling what's going into a character. If you can kind of read in between the lines a little bit and figure that out, and it does expand on them so much more. I mean, the entire sequence where we just got like the music coming in of us kind of unpacking and adjusting to our new life kind of together and at this home together, it was really nice and well done too. And it really spaced things out. It really slowed everything down and allowed you to kind of feel that. It's not typically, some people, you move or you go into a new environment and everything's just hectic, right? It's also new, it's also fresh, the time flies, things are like great. And here though, it's very different. There are people who are going about their day-to-day lives very slow. There are people who are very anxious and concerned and cautious about the scenario that they find themselves in, and the approaches that they take to that is visually displayed to us by slowing things and allowing you to really see them having to almost struggle or like find these new adjustments to that life that they find themselves in. And it's pretty cool. I do want to check out our voice actors and actresses because I want to. And I forgot to do it on Isla's video yesterday too. So first off, we have Miss Ayase Saki, who is only done 2 things that I've seen. Wow. So nothing really that I am familiar with at all. Yeah. Nothing at all that I'm familiar with. So a good starting role for her. I really like her voice and her tone that she kind of carries for her character. I mean, I'm assuming she's just matching whatever they wanted and the way it was written, but I think it works itself nice, and I really do enjoy that. My boy Otto. I didn't even pick up on that. His voice did sound really familiar, but I didn't pick up on that. I'm going to have to listen again. Maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe that's all I'm going to hear now when I think about it. He's the main character in Isla too. We just watched that yesterday. What? See, this is what happened. I would have noticed. I probably would. That might be where I'm hearing it from. Because he goes into the things. Because I had that same feeling last night. I was sleeping or going to sleep, and I was just thinking. I was like, I kept replaying his voice for some reason in my head. I was like, I know that. And I never checked. Okay, now I feel fucking stupid. Yeah, a bunch of people I'm familiar with on the parent side, or at least the mom side here. Oh, the boy Legoshi for the dad. I love the opening sequence, keeping everything black and white. Not really letting too much of the color or anything at all in, and getting inner dialogue between the characters and their kind of visions on what's happening here, right? This isn't a joke. This isn't some fantasy story that you really want to see, happen. This is real life, and there's different ways that we approach and treat these kind of scenarios, laying it out for you, immediately letting you know and setting the tone of what's happening, of, hey, this is not the same, right? This is very different. Each of them as well giving off ideas on strangers, and through the line of saying that people begin as strangers, but step siblings kind of start as strangers, or people as in siblings. So when you have somebody born, you're a stranger to that person, but then you can end up growing closer because you're related by that blood. You have that certain bond. You're always together as that person kind of comes in the world. Whereas here, you start off, your entire life is built up until you get to a certain point, and of course you have to start as strangers. I don't fully agree with her statement of you stay strangers until the very end, because that's just not true in the slightest. You have the option when you become, especially based on the age and everything that you find yourself in, right? If these people are siblings that are like 7 years old, and now they're forced to live together and everything, they're going to grow together, and you're no longer going to be strangers, and you're no longer going to even look at each other as step siblings, and you're probably going to look at each other as siblings, unless you don't really get along. Then you could look at it entirely different. But then you begin to have it because of that timeline that's there. Now they're in a situation where these two are kind of grown, a lot older, so they don't have to see that. They don't live out this fantasy as much of, oh, I want to have this sibling or something so we can go out and do all these things and through all these fantasy stories and everything that you kind of see about what that kind of relationship is like. You don't really have that anymore. So you don't have that desire either to go out of here and do that because of the maturity and the age and everything that they find themselves at now. So you have the option entirely. We can stay strangers to the end of the day. We can be people who just happen to end up living together. That doesn't mean that I have to view you as a sister or I have to view you as a brother. And we just kind of are two people who found themselves in a circumstance where they end up living together, and that's kind of it, who happen to have more conversations with each other than they would typically because of where they're at. But that doesn't mean that we're anything outside of that. Sure, you can take that approach if you want, but you can also look at it that way and say, now we are friends because of that. Now we can look at each other as siblings if that's really the route that they desire to kind of go towards. So I don't maybe fully agree with her statement at all here, but it's not the worst, kind of perspective, I think, on it. And I think it does a good enough job at laying the tone initially of letting you know like what we're really gonna start getting ourselves into. Very slow, very fun to kind of explore here a little bit and space things out between all the characters. So we get to see they're at the dinner already here, but they don't really let us fully see it as we get this walking sequence. So does this happen? Like, has any of you guys been really in these scenarios where you've had like a parent remarry or something and you've never been introduced to at all to the other siblings that you're going to end up kind of having until that time that it occurs? Unless they didn't, but they were in the ring, so I'm assuming that they did. I was gonna say unless they didn't yet, and it's more of like they're going to start, and now you guys have to. But it just seems like weird to like randomly throw it on this person. It seems like you would almost explain or have your kid kind of aware that you are starting to see this person, and that this might be something that starts to come up, and then you end up doing a meeting or something at some point. But it literally was just like, oh, by the way, I met this girl like last week, and now we're just gonna get married and move in and do all this. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know. So the idea to lay out the story at the beginning is this isn't some piece of fiction, and this isn't like some fantasy story, and instead then you have like something like this that just doesn't, I mean, at least sit with me too well, because it just doesn't work, I guess. That way is how I've always felt, at least. But I don't know. We get a picture of her when she's young, because apparently she's not very photogenic, which we do get to see through Saki, that she doesn't see herself the way that others kind of see her. And I think it's through the things that she's went through throughout her life, while we don't know so much about it, but just the distance that she's almost had from her mom, the being alone, the talking about before how she never really had even her own room or anything before too. So all of these things are her almost kind of becoming a little bit more humble. So despite the way that others kind of appear to her, or she appears to others, she doesn't view herself kind of in that same light. And it shows within her struggles and everything that she describes later on, of the difficulty that she's had, or maybe not even difficulty, but just the way that relationships and friendships have kind of formed and worked for her up to this point. Because as she said, that she's had them and she had to like cut off friends and everything due to what occurred, but it more so seemed like she just didn't want to have these people around who didn't really hold any value or use to her. She used some sort of line. I don't want to say like she's just trying to use them or whatever, but it made perfect sense with the way that she was describing them. And it was more of, I was trying to take on like, this is a serious thing and a real thing that's kind of going down, and they turned everything into jokes and didn't want to have these discussions or talks with me and make it normal at all. It feels like she definitely, maybe she doesn't struggle completely to make them, but she just is very grounded with the way that she feels about things, and she's very kind of a little bit more matured, I would say, to the point that she feels like, or maybe it's not, maybe you can even view that as somebody who isn't at all, and it's just somebody who only wants things to go their way or the way that they envision them. And when you don't do something, they have that ability to just kind of instantly kind of snap, and by snap I mean just like cut ties with other people. I guess it could be that. So it's like it's multiple different possible ways, but we don't see the route of like she would struggle for friends and everything due to the fact that she is fairly open with the way she's speaking. And maybe that's just because Asamaru is so like open with the way he speaks, and he's very friendly, so he can easily kind of bring other people into the conversation and make that work. But I don't know, her ability here just to kind of call that out, see through others extremely well, it almost seems like, and just laying everything out for him. And I love the idea of her just being like, yeah, I don't expect you to do anything, and I'm not expecting like you to expect me to do anything or whatever, right? Like, I'm not None of that's going to happen. Do you really understand? And my perspective and take on that is just, we're not going to change as people. We're going to be the same. And even if our relationship starts getting closer, or we just stay as we always kind of are, nothing should change. You shouldn't feel like you have to do things different or act different or change who you are just because of my presence and my involvement. And even the same thing with the mom and everything coming in, right? Just continue onwards and be yourself, because we're not at a point that things like that are really going to affect us or change at all. We end up getting ourselves ready. We learn a little bit insight into the mom and the dad with the way that they each kind of keep up their appearances and kind of act and do things. They're people who you would look at and would probably call themselves not proper adults, or others might call them that, but they are very capable in certain aspects and of course can help out others. And they work perfectly together because they both complement the things that the other one is almost lacking entirely. Learning about family traditions and all these things. But once again, that's not something that we all have to take on and do if we really don't want to. We open up the new room that she gets to observe and see how things are so much more big, and starts calling him out too, right? Like, this is a act almost that you're putting on. You're being way too polite. I want you to be casual, be more of yourself. Don't feel like you have to put up this front. And he's just like, well, I can, but is that really what you want? And it just establishes communication between the two really well. We're not going a route where we're gonna have miscommunication, or we're going to have all these misunderstandings that cause big disputes and everything to occur. And we're just going to be kind of open and honest, talk these things out with each other. And if we don't have that capability, then we have no use to really even be a part of each other's lives in any sort of way, because nothing's ever going to really get done. And somebody like Saki has kind of already displayed that, and will later, when she has this conversation with him about what happened with our friends and everything before, where if you're not somebody who I can openly just kind of go through and do that with, we're not really on the same page. And it's way easier for you and literally anybody else. And that's just how it works naturally in life. If you can't outwardly communicate feelings, emotions, just literally anything with people, and instead you have people around you who turn everything that you do into a joke, or you have people who take everything too serious when you are trying to mess around and joke. But at certain moments, you have to kind of understand when people are properly trying to communicate and not bottle all that stuff kind of in. And just have those people that you can. And if you do, you become a lot more freed up. And relationships and things tend to work out so much better if that's the case. The montage where the music and everything comes in of everybody just kind of unpacking and adjusting to their new life is great. I love the sequence of her in here and seeing the stickers and stuff. It's memories and things that have happened from the past, right? These have been here for a long time. These are probably from his childhood, and it feels like you can kind of understand or learn the attachment a little bit that he has to this place that he's in, and also how long that he's kind of been here and where he's come from. And it gives you a little glimpse into that person's life a bit, which I think is a really sweet thing. It's these memories and these things that he doesn't even remember, and nobody else can kind of even notice until she ends up seeing that. And then it brings so much more to come back to her too, because if she's ever had these moments like that for herself, it really comes to life. Once again, we display this joke, which I talked about before, but it does a good job at not highlighting her as a character who would initially get mad and treating it like a lot of animes probably kind of would. But he does end up having a moment where he like freaks out right away. Well, he does freak out a little bit right away. It's more of like the shock of that's kind of what he ended up coming up with, as opposed to what it actually was. Are you surprised that a flashy girl like me goes to a prep school? Once again, it's the way that almost she views herself versus how she assumes or has had other people kind of view her, being entirely different. But he gets called into work. I really love his co-worker. She's great. She's like the version of what they talked about at the beginning, how this is actual real life for them and it's not some story. She's the person who like would see this and turn it into a joke and a story. She's the person who would bring this kind of thing up and joke around like this that Saki would not want to be friends with, right? Like, that's exactly what it is. And she's like rooting for the ship and kind of pushing for it and messing around a bit. But she brings some more life and energy that I think is kind of necessary, which is a line that I'm interested to see where we develop and go, because we are currently at a point where everything had a certain tone to it throughout the entirety of this episode, outside of this like real one sequence, I kind of felt like. So if we go into future episodes and we keep that same thing, how that's going to feel, or if it's going to almost feel like it gets a little old at a certain point. So being able to have characters like this and maybe scenarios where we can break that up a bit, I think will be very key, which I think we will get, because we get to see later in the OP that we have like a pink or red hair kind of girl who seems to be pretty energetic, and we have another one here. So there seems to be different characters that'll be coming involved that'll probably be able to help out and spice things up a little bit more. And by spice things up, I just mean like liven them up is probably the word I should have used there. Like this, just like such a long sequence of just adjusting and show you like what his normal life is kind of like, and then him getting like completely startled that he came in and ends up finding somebody else. The struggle between the two to not know how to really react or respond when you come home and actually see somebody, not a situation that you have found yourself in really ever. Her just general happiness to actually have been able to spend time with her mom finally, something that hasn't really occurred in so long. I don't get the whole sequence here. I think this is more so just like her realization that somebody else is in here and she's not completely alone in this house once again, which is kind of what the end sequence almost really symbolizes as well. And just like, I love the hesitation, the struggle after he knocks, or before he knocks, but then also before he tries to go and do it a second time and actually gets a response. Once again, just showcasing that distance and the talking behind the door, not opening it, not intruding himself at all, like not trying to greet her or visually see her, keeping up those walls and those barriers and that distance that's kind of between them as they grow a little bit closer to each other. We start and we get the OP where we have versions of themselves like really come in when they're younger, which is interesting to me. I mean, it could just be like, oh, they actually met along the way, but to me, it reads more of this is the scenario we talked about at the beginning, or I talked about where if we had met when we were younger, how would things drastically have changed, right? How would that have adjusted what our relationship had become? How would we view each other over time? They'd arguably be more sibling-like, right? What you would consider to be that, than to where they find themselves at now. They would arguably not develop any sort of romantic things that might be the direction that we go here, right? Like none of that stuff would probably have happened if this all occurred at a young age, but due to the circumstances and where they're at right now, it's entirely different. And it makes you wonder like what you're restricting yourself of and holding yourself back, right? You're having fun together like this, but instead now you're at a point and you're trying to distance yourself, and she finds herself all alone here until she can come out and actually find him now. But how different the environment is and the way that they greet each other, and they're not moving at the same pace or anything either, is really, really interesting. And then I really like this scene too, just her going back and forth. And I don't know if it's the let me turn this on, mom comes in like late, early morning, whatever, so she has light and stuff, or if it's just the I've got to remember to do this, and now I'm struggling to figure out where all the light switches and everything are, and she's getting all confused and she's like messing around with it. I'm assuming that's likely to be the case, but it just is a really good example again of us being shown like the struggles and the adjustments and stuff that she's going to have to go through with her new life here. So thumbs up. Good. I really did enjoy it. Definitely answer those questions from the beginning I had if you could. Beginning of this discussion at least. But yeah, direction forward, I do wonder if it's going to be actual romance development between the main two, or if it's more so just going to be them two coming into no longer being strangers with each other and us being able to just experience that, while possible relationships and others can bloom between the other characters. I don't know. But I don't know, because the way that we've set it up, it almost makes me wish that we don't go into that, right? Like that we don't go into development between these two, like as a romantic interest, and we don't do that, and instead we just let them kind of live their life, and we fight the stereotype that we've developed so much. But I don't know if that's the plan or not. I'm excited for more. Can't guarantee I'm going to be here for more. It just depends, I think, really how I'm feeling after I edit this, and also how you guys leave some comments and let me know. But I would be definitely interested in that, as I did enjoy it quite a bit. I'll be continuing it regardless, whether it's on the channel or on my own time. I do plan to continue. So there's a big thumbs up again from me. We're not off to a bad start at all this season, I would say. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, though. If you liked it all, like and subscribe to me on to me. Feel free to check out the videos and channel and become to this particular series. I'll be back possibly for the second episode next week. I hope you have a great one. Peace.